like to start this special evening by introducing our special guest tonight, Gene Kelly's wife and biographer, Patricia Ward Kelly, who I think is going to tell us a little bit more about this classic Hollywood musical we're about to see. Patricia, the microphone is yours.
Tonight, I so appreciate it. This is the first time I've been out to do anything except get my mail out of the mailbox and walk my dog. So I think this is very special, and thank you. This is an extraordinary place. Some of you may know the history of it, but it was built in 1929. And in 1929, Gene had just entered Penn State. It was called Penn State College back then. And he was so excited to be part as an undergraduate, and then the Depression hit, and he had to return to Pittsburgh, and he had to leave Penn State, and he had to go to the University of Pittsburgh because his family's money just ran out, and he had to start working to pay. And it's interesting that the way that he paid to get through college, he started out by doing a whole lot of different jobs. He was puddling concrete, he was rolling tires for Firestone Tire Company, and he was also working at a gas station. And he thought a gas station would be a perfect place to work because he thought that he could, fill a few tanks, but most of the time he'd be able to sit in the back and study for his classes. But the owner of the gas station realized Gene was a pretty handsome guy, and he put Gene in a uniform and made him stand up in front of the gas station to try to attract traffic to come into the gas station. So Gene was working 6 days a week and working very hard, and then he realized that his younger brother Fred was making more money than Gene was, working just a few nights a week, dancing at American Legion halls and performing in amateur nights and things are all around Pittsburgh and across the Ohio line. So Gene decided he would quit all of the pumping gas stuff and all of these other things, and he decided to become an act with his younger brother. And the two of them went out and performed in American Legion halls, very much like this one. And it was the way that Gene put himself through college. And Gene and his younger brother they both had this slick back black hair, and they wore +4s. That's a word for a long kind of short pant that young men wore in those days. And they used to do a number on roller skates, and they were both trained gymnasts and acrobats, and so they would do these things. For any of you who are gymnasts, they would do kip-ups and really dramatic things on the skates, and so they would get a huge response from the American Legion halls and various other speakeasies, because you couldn't sell alcohol, but in the American Legion halls they kind of operated as speakeasies so people could get I'm not supposed to say that probably. And then the American Legion came back into play when Gene decided that he was going to go to New York because he wanted to be a choreographer. And he went off to New York, and they asked him where he was from, and he said Pittsburgh, and they all just laughed at him, so he couldn't get a job as a choreographer. But he decided, he got little roles, and what he would do is he could pay 50 cents for an hour to work out in the big American Legion halls, the floors, and if he had enough money, he would hire a pianist to accompany him maybe once a week to work it out. Otherwise, he was there. There was another place in New York called Michael's, and Gene said the floors there were so uneven, and rats used to run across the floors and everything, but it was all he couldn't afford much but he always had to get in and rehearse and practice and build his style. So it's interesting that the American Legion halls could have had a role in Gene's life very early on. So I just wanted to share those things with you. And he was in the Navy. He was a Lieutenant JG in the Navy. And maybe we can do another night where we get into more of those things, but now we should probably turn to this one. You know, it's interesting, this film premiered at the Egyptian Theater on April 9th, 1952. So it's next year,
Wow.
it will be 70 years old. And Gene used to say to me, he said, you know, I'd like to come back in 100 years to see what people are still watching. And we're not quite at 100, but I have a sneaking suspicion that 100 years from now, people from his time, people will still be watching this. And as Gene used to say, not about this, but he would say about a movie that was holding up, he'd say, I think it has legs, and I think this movie has legs. So I went around the country for the 60th anniversary of Singin' in the Rain with Rita Moreno, who has a small role in this as Zelda. You'll see her, she's very good in her role, and she's very spicy in this, and she has a role, it was the first time, and she always commends Gene for this, because it was the first time she was not typecast as a Latina. And she really appreciated that Gene put her in this other role. So watch for Zelda. And as we toured around, everybody would say, you know, Rita, why are people still watching this movie? And she said, because it is a perfect musical. And there's so many components. Gene always said there's no one person. It was this amalgamation of all of these different people. And he did say that he thought that, you know, of this team, that Gene Hagen is the one who really, the glue that held all of this together. And for those of you who've not seen the movie, you will instantly recognize Gene Hagen's voice in this. It's a screech that you'll never forget. But interestingly, now this is a little tricky because some of you have not seen this, but this is a movie about people dubbing other people's voices. So if you want to know what Gene Hagen's real speaking voice was, then it is when Debbie Reynolds is supposedly dubbing Gene Hagen's speaking voice, that's really Gene Hagen's real voice. You got that? So when Debbie Reynolds supposedly says, "Until the stars turn cold," that's Gene Hagen. She had a very beautiful voice. Not in this. And then also, when Debbie Reynolds is supposedly dubbing the songs for Gene Hagen, that's actually another person who is named Betty Noyce, who is dubbing Debbie Reynolds singing for dubbing for Gene Hagen. Welcome to Hollywood. So in addition to Gene Hagen, you have some extraordinary players in here. You have Donald O'Connor. Gene thought Donald O'Connor was one of the greatest improvisational performers of all time. He thought he was a kind of unsung hero, that he really should have gotten more attention. Gene felt that the Moses Supposes number, where they're dancing together, was the best tap number that Gene ever did on film. And the Moses, when you see Donald does his Make 'em Laugh number, that was created because Donald, there's a lot of time in filmmaking which is just dead time. People, they're setting lights, they're changing things, and the actors just have to sit around. It's very dull. So Donald would just start picking stuff up and doing these little funny things and breaking up all of Gene's assistants. They're all cracking up, and then they'd come back the next day and they'd say, "Donald, do that thing you did," you know, and he had no recollection of what he did. So Gene had his two assistants, Jeannie Coyne and Carol Haney, write down everything that Donald did. And then Gene took all of that and linked it together, and the composers wrote a song, Make 'em Laugh, and Gene put it together and put that on it. And you'll see there's at one point where Donald does a flip off of the wall. That was the one thing he couldn't do. He had done that as a young boy in vaudeville, touring with his family, but he'd kind of lost his confidence, so Gene brought his older brother in to work with him on that, so you'll see that he did get that done. It's not true that he went to the hospital for 3 weeks after, or that he went to his house and bed for. He actually went to the next set and rehearsed for the next thing. But there also Debbie Reynolds. This was a very big role for her. And she was chosen by Gene. He saw a test of her, and he thought she was perfect for the ingenue. So he did select her, and that's true. And she's extraordinary in this. Now, Sid Charisse was never supposed to be in this movie. The big production number was to be done by Donald O'Connor, and Donald had a previous engagement and had to go off. So they brought Debbie's dancing abilities were not great enough to do a big number like that, so they brought Sid Charisse in. Now, Sid Charisse was a classically trained ballet dancer, so she had never done jazz, and so Gene said it was very hard to get her off point, off the ballet point, and to get the low-down jazz, but what you'll see in the green dress number that she absolutely captured that. And there's also a number that she does, which is a ballet scene where she's wearing a white outfit with a long, long, long scarf. And Gene told me that it took the equivalent of 3 airplane motors to get that scarf into the air, so at exactly the right time. And I have photographs where they're called Ritter fans, and Gene is directing the Ritter fan operator where to position that so it hits him and it bounces off and it goes straight up into the air. He said the torque on his body as he's having to hold Sid and turn, and the wind of that scarf was incredible, but it's a beautiful sequence. It was actually cut out of the movie in a lot of countries, including Spain, because the censors figured out what it was. It's lovemaking, and they cut that out. So I think you'll see that it's pretty tame for today. You'll hear, has anybody heard that they put milk in the water so you can see the raindrops? Raise your hand if you've heard that. It's not true. So don't read anything, don't read any books, don't go online, just call. Yeah, well, Universal. It's in every book, it's everywhere. There's no milk in the water. I keep saying it and people keep fighting me on this, but what it was is, Gene said, it's just beautiful cinematography and lighting. And if those of you who go to sports events, if it starts to rain and you're out you look down on the field, you don't see the raindrops hitting. But if you turn your head and you look up against the stadium lights, you see the rain. So it's called backlighting. What they had to do was backlight all of the raindrops so you could see them and they're illuminated. Now in this, you'll notice that Gene is dancing part of the time in front of plate glass windows. So the challenge for them was, how do you backlight the windows and not show the camera equipment and the lighting equipment in the windows? And many times they would have to stop and redo the number because they could see the machinations behind. But it's phenomenal what they're doing. Now, Gene, it is true, the one thing that you'll read that is true, it's the only thing, is that he was very ill when he shot the iconic Singin' the Rain number. He had a temperature of about 103. And it was shot in a day and a half. And Gene, as you're watching that sequence, I don't think you'll get any hint that he's sick. And you have to remember he's directing, choreographing, and starring. So as Rita Moreno said, she said he was in constant motion. He'd be up on the boom, and then he'd be down on the set, and he'd be back up on the boom setting lights, and then he'd go back, and then he'd go back up and set the camera angles, and then he'd go change into his costume, and then he would go shoot the number. And then what he would do, this was all shot at MGM at Culver City. What they did is that they draped the set in black tarpaulin, and they hung rigging for the water. And so Gene would, as they were pausing, he would go outside of the tarpaulin and lie on the sidewalk and just try to burn the fever out of him, and then go back in and shoot it. And one other thing is that they said that they ran out of water. Well, the water pressure, everybody came home from work in Culver City and took a shower, and they turned on their hoses and watered their lawns, and suddenly the water pressure just went whoop, and they couldn't shoot. So the next day they had to hang more rigging and bring it up. So, okay, let me tell you, I mean, some of you've seen Singin' in the Rain, and you might like this movie. I heard somebody's seen it 10 times, somebody's seen it, asked me how many I've seen it. I think I'm about 100 times, but not everybody likes this movie, so I wanted to share something with you. This is a letter I received in April 2003. Dear Mrs. Kelly, my name is Alan. I am in the 4th grade at PS 86 in Jamaica, New York. My class and I watched your husband's movie, Singin' in the Rain. I didn't like your husband's movie. I found out that your husband's movie is short if it didn't have any dancing or singing. Maybe your husband could cut out the dancing and have just gotten to the point of the movie. Can't your husband just stop thinking about dancing? Your friend, Alan Palacios. I love this. I think this is brilliant. I love that this teacher had all the kids write to me and she didn't censor it. So I wrote back to Alan and I said, thank you so much for your letter. And I said, you know, it's interesting because in the case of Gene Kelly, the dancing actually does something. It has a role. And that's what distinguishes Gene from his predecessors, because if you look at movies before Gene, then usually a dance number was done by a dance troupe or dancers, and they would be on a polished floor or something. And the story would come to that, and then it would stop, and they'd do a number, and then they'd go back to the story. And Gene said, I want the dance to tell the story. I want it to propel the plot. And there isn't a better thing than the iconic Singin' in the Rain number to do that, because what better way to say you're in love than to kiss the girl and wave off the taxi and then dance and sing in the rain. So, and then Gene got one note. I'm just going to share this one with you. Dear Mr. Kelly, my name is Jim Hadley. My mother won't let me jump off the furniture. Why did your mother let you? So I hope you enjoy this. The writing is superb. The great team of Betty Comden and Adolph Green. You know, you look at something that's 70 years old, and often, if you look at something even 5 years old or 10, the humor doesn't quite fit. It's not funny. You kind of go, ooh, that's 80s humor, that's 90s humor. You know, I think you'll find that this holds up. And Gene always said that the hardest thing was to create something that is both contemporary and timeless. And so I hope you enjoy this. I'm sorry I can't intermingle with you more than I did dashing between you. But I'll be back, and with hope we'll have this COVID thing down, and we'll be able to embrace each other and greet each other as I usually like to do. So in the meantime, I am on Facebook at Gene Kelly The Legacy. I'm on Instagram at Gene Kelly Legacy, and I do respond. So send me a note. If you don't hear from me, just keep poking me, because I really do get back to you, as a few people here are here to know. So thank you so much for getting out tonight. It means a lot. And thank you for supporting this extraordinary theater, because this is what it's all about. You are now about to see this movie as it was seen at the Egyptian 70 years ago. It's a 35mm print. This doesn't happen very often. So thank you. Bye-bye.